bring the Ways and Means Committee meeting to order. Once again, we're going through budget discussion. Tonight is Public Works. And I think let's go page by page. Instead of, I think we were kind of jumping all over last week.
So, question, when this was sent out, I don't know why it was, because I tried printing it at home, and I thought my printer messed up. It starts like at 43. And then
Oh.
And then it jumps to like page 11.
Because that's, because the Public Works, or the 101 fund is park, or not park, it's police, fire. So Public Works starts at page 43 is why it starts
Oh, so
there.
it's like a large report that you just pulled your portion from?
Yep,
Okay. I guess that makes sense.
Got more money.
So it is accurate, the first page is 43.
for me anyways.
okay.
I was wondering if Corky could zoom in a little bit more on himself.
Yeah, it needs to be a little closer.
Come on, I'm a novice here, I'm a novice.
Is it California?
Okay, so I guess, we start with Brandon in the hot seat, or Audrey, or?
I can ramble for you. So I noticed in some of my notes from my revenues, my 2002 notes, I did not delete, so I'll mention them as I go through them.
Okay.
The $5 to $6.50 raise was the garbage increase that we did last year.
So that whole comment then?
Yep.
Okay.
And same with the streetlight improvements, or the streetlight funding, so
Okay.
the revenue is reflected properly, I just didn't delete my notes from
So any
last
of the
year.
notes that say 2022.
Yeah,
We should just go ahead and delete.
yeah,
All right.
I'll go in and delete them, and I can send you new, reports tomorrow, but I did notice that, but, so, I guess, I don't have, in all these funds, I don't have I'll show you what the funds are short with the proposed budget, and, kind of pick your brain on how you want to pick up revenue, or decrease expenses, I guess, so,
So, can I ask Brandon, just before we get started going line by line?
yeah.
Do you anticipate there being a break even, or do you anticipate there being a shortfall, or?
Well, if you go to page, I know we're not jumping all over the place, but I'm gonna make you jump all over the place.
Sure, right off the bat.
If you go to, is there not isn't there, I suppose this one doesn't work that way. In water and wastewater, it's easier, cause, only those expenses are out of that fund, so, the 101's not that easy, but I did go line for line, and that was, my goal was to break even at minimum. So.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't want to get us off track.
Okay,
That's
so the, snow removal services has been pretty consistent in that, $4,000 range, so we got it at 4,500. Private work kind of jumps all over the place. That's if we fix a street for the gas company or whatnot, we charge for our time. So it depends on how much, at the end of the day, it depends on how much time our guys have. Last year, we were short-staffed, so you can see our revenue for that line was pretty low, because we didn't have time to help other entities out. Hoping to get to the point where we can start helping them out a little bit here and there where we can. The garbage bags is pretty consistently in that 22,000. We didn't change the bag rate, we just increased the base when we did that garbage increase, so I left that at 22,000.
So I had a question on that. So
Yep.
if we switch to cans though,
Yep.
then that would probably go away?
I guess we were talking about keeping both services, so you could buy bags or cans.
Okay.
We're-
So,
Weren't we also you were only gonna purchase so many cans to, like
For
a
a
trial
trial.
run with this?
Or, yeah, like I said, there wasn't nothing set in stone, but we were talking about maybe grabbing like 200 to 300 cans for a trial on our existing
Can we
truck.
probably get into this, so are we gonna talk about that truck somewhere down the road here, or?
I have the can dumper and the cans in the budget for purchase to adding it to the truck.
Okay, we'll get to that then when we,
Yep.
That was page 51. I had a question on that earlier.
Can I just ask for the two above that, the street cut permit and the highway street, what are those? The first two items?
Oh, so the state aid, I jumped over those. The state aid is our maintenance, it's what we bring in for our MnDOT state aid, maintenance fee funding. And then the street cuts is just what Greg would, have his permits if somebody puts a new driveway approach in and we give them a permit for cutting the curb.
Okay, why did we have such a significant increase this year
In which one?
in the street cut? Because it looks like your year-to-date's already at 350 and you budget it for 100.
Yeah, well, so I guess I should probably increase that a little bit because we did increase our street cut fee, to, the minimum used to be 150 and I believe the minimum now is, 300 for curb cuts. We were having contractors that they had their own equipment, but they were having us cut because we were so cheap that it didn't make sense for them to use their own equipment, basically. And if that's the case, we're going backwards on those blades. Those diamond cut blades are expensive, but I'll increase that line a little bit.
Okay.
so based on that information, we only do a couple a year then, or one or two a year?
Yeah, we don't do much cutting.
Okay.
It's usually just a new home. If the driveway apron wasn't, sometimes they're already in with the job. Sometimes we put a normal curb in and just cut wherever they put their driveways, so,
Okay,
yep, that's just off of, basically how many new homes are going in and if the driveway needs to be relocated.
Okay.
The garbage, so the 4403 back down to garbage, that's higher because of the increased $1.50 to that's where all the base garbage funding comes in on the water utilities. Recycling fees, that's just when somebody buys those, blue cans, that's minimal, I just kinda left it where it was. Pest control revenue is pretty standard in that 40,000. Probably could raise that $1,000, but 40 grand is pretty close.
And the recycling fee's zero, so are we not charging for anything?
That's just for if somebody comes in and buys cans, the revenue comes into that.
Okay,
So,
so
you
people
know,
don't buy cans.
Not very often, and
Okay.
When a new, the incentive program, the new homes get free bins, so they don't pay
Oh.
for them.
so when we get ready to, sell the large cans, will
Yeah.
that go under the,
Garbage and refuge.
I
4403?
it could either go like, if we're gonna get cans for recycling, we could probably have revenue go into that 4404 for the recycling bins, and I was thinking I don't know, the garbage bag 4402 is
Okay.
the most appropriate in my mind.
Yeah,
I would think it might be helpful that way too, for us to see like what we're actually getting out of those cans too.
Well, and maybe would you wanna put it under a current one, or would you wanna create like a new can so it's easier to track? No?
Can you rename it?
No.
Yeah, these things are like historical. They never go away.
Yeah.
We could
I mean,
start,
like, could you say recycling fees and cans? as of 23.
Yeah, that's the issue with these categories. Once they're there, very difficult to remove. So we can work with what you're suggesting so we can track that can fee more closely
Yeah.
if that's the way we go.
Yeah, and I get the historical context for that too, and not wanting to change that, so. But it would just be nice to be able to see that separate from garbage
Well,
or something else, so we have a better idea of if
If
it's.
we're charging a recycling fee for the blue bins that nobody's buying, why can't we just put the garbage cans under recycling?
Well, that's
fee?
what I think we were talking about. Maybe
Yeah,
that would
we
be a good
could,
idea.
just to keep it separate so we could, because, yeah, if you throw it underneath a garbage, bag revenue, it's gonna be hard to tell how many are utilizing the garbage bags and how many are utilizing the cans. I don't know if I mentioned the streetlights, but that's I should probably, I don't know. We're at like 60% of the budget year right now, so that 210 is probably a little bit high now that I look at that, so I should probably go down to like 195 on that.
So did that accomplish what it wanted to? Is it evening out what we,
We're putting in.
Yeah, we'll get to that. I'll rattle off the total. We'll look back once we get to the streetlight expenses. I think we're putting a little bit in reserve, if I remember it, from that increase. So on to page 44. It's your total revenues there, and obviously there's those notes again that I'll delete. And then on to expenditures. These are the salary lines I use the same percentages so last year, there's, 8 or 10 categories that all public works salaries come out of. So I figured out on an average year, we'll just say, what fund is this right here? That must just be regular public works. So, 35,000 of the labor, you'll see funds that are heavy some years, on where they're in the hole heavy, but then if we'll say the dike and flood control for high waters over budget, we'll just say your street maintenance or tree trimming's below budget because they were doing those duties instead of the street maintenance duties like fighting high water. So the increase on all the labor lines is for the COLA that was built into the AFSCME agreement, and then the projected step increase for each employee on their anniversary date. So I'll call it, I think it was about 3 to 4% increase on that line for the labor lines.
Is garbage collection falling under these salaries, or does that fall under a different area?
What's that?
Garbage collection for the salaries there, does that fall
It-
under here, or does that fall
No,
under?
there'll be garbage hauling somewhere along the line here. So the proposed budget for the regular salary is 35,941. Overtime 521, and then we weren't able to hire. I wasn't able to find somebody to do part-time this summer for the street department, but that 11,000, I was hoping to increase the part-time wage so that we could actually attract some seasonal workers. It's been years since we've been able to fill that position, paying $12.
Is that assuming that increase in hourly rate to $18 an hour?
Yes, the 11,000 is to 18 was my estimate. $100 for the other departments. That's just if the park comes to help, if to fill in, the salary comes out of there. And then private work, if we were to be doing some work for our labor that, let's say that we're fixing a patch for Great Plains, it falls under that private work. Civil projects is 2,643. The demo line was when, if we assist like tearing down a house, the Public Works in the past has helped with demo work. FICA's just the normal insurance or benefits. Then we increased the health insurance slightly to keep
So
up.
the FICA contribution, was steady, but you're budgeting for 228? Was that a?
Is it gone
typo
down?
or-
Looks like it's pop. Yeah, it looks like
Or is
I
that a
missed it.
typo?
Looks like I missed a zero.
Okay. So it should have a 0 behind it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Medicare's 521. Paras 2696. And, you know, payroll, these are kind of like the salaries, the payroll pulls certain funds out of different areas, so at times one will be short, but it's fully funded through each category is the best way I can say it. And then health insurance, 7,839. Then the life insurance is the city's paying the employees life insurance, $42.
Question
Yep.
on health insurance. So do we negotiate our health insurance annually?
It is in this contract as annually.
As
Yep.
annually? So this represents a portion of the total health insurance cost, but just attributed to this department, or this
For this-
aspect of the department.
This category
Okay.
of the public
Okay.
works, yeah.
So somewhere in our discussions, we'll see a big number that says this is what Blue Cross, Blue Shield, or whatever it is, costs the
He's
city.
okay.
It's Corky.
Yeah, what you'll see, we're assuming a 10% increase from last year
Oh, okay,
overall, and we've split it out between each department
Yep.
and then each subcategory. So you'd have to add them all together at some point. We haven't received our quote yet
Okay.
from our insurance provider, but we assumed 10%.
okay. Thank you.
So office supplies, if they need some tape or pens or whatnot, comes out of there. Miscellaneous supplies, it's exactly, it's fund if we
Assumed
have-
most often 4% for those types of
We're gonna
increases.
pause a minute here, please. Henry, you okay?
Yeah, I'm fine. Little sleepy.
Okay, continue to move on, I guess.
Okay. Um, buildings repair and maintenance, that is garage doors, I believe, for the street department. Their garage doors are in bad shape. I need 222. Yeah, 50,000 of it is garage door replacement at the street shop, and then the other 13 is just for general maintenance for painting and whatnot around the public works buildings. Some walk-in doors need to be replaced. Rock rapid material, that's if they need some rock for around culverts. We use it sometimes, a lot of years we don't use it. Materials. haven't taken anything out of that fund this year. I've been kind of allocating it to others, so I just left it at 0. Safety expenses has kind of been high at years, because in 22 it was high because we had a lot of new employees, and that's where their new shirts and hard hats and safety glasses and stuff come out of. But I kind of averaged it at that 832. And
So how is that, does each employee get an allotment for, or what they should have, or how do you distribute that?
so every year we get them 2 safety shirts, each employee. Safety glasses, we get them on their initial, when they first are hired, and then as needed if they're damaged or whatnot. And hard hats need to be, I can't remember the exact time frame, but hard hats are stamped, and I believe it's like 3 to 5 years. Every 3 to 5 years, a hard hat has to be replaced. So whenever they hit their end of life, we get new hard hats too. But the safety expenses, there are safety expense items, lines in each fund too. So that's what I have for page 44.
Okay, can I ask a question about building repairs and maintenance? That's 0222. So, remember last week we had a discussion about municipal buildings?
And grounds.
And grounds. So is an expense like this likely to come out of that fund?
It hasn't in the past, I don't believe.
No, it has not.
So.
But could it?
I
If
would-
there's a healthy reserve, we could take some of these expenses for these building maintenance and repair from that fund.
Yeah, I'm not even sure what's in that account, but I thought for sure we had municipal building and grounds funding to it each year.
And that's something we'll certainly consider when we go back, when all the budget preliminary have been presented. If, for example, we want to get this door, we'll see where else we could categorize it without raising this particular amount.
Okay.
Okay?
Who does
And if
that,
you,
who does that municipal fund like fall under as far as like who's responsible for that one?
There is, I'm not sure which department it's under, but there is a line item for.
Sure, I was just wondering who that was, what department that is.
I don't believe it's tied to a specific department.
Okay.
I think it's just.
Will we
there
see
is-
that then as part of this budget process?
Well, it'd be under like restrictive accounts and also, or reserves, and also reserves that municipal building and grounds, I think, falls under one of the reserves. Am I right on that?
that's, yes, it can be a specific reserve or an unreserved, but if we were to come back and say to you, the door is important, we recognize the levy can't be as high as it would be established, we can use buildings and grounds, and this is a reserve that we have the capacity to show you, we can purchase that.
And will we at some point in this process have access to the information about how much is in reserve and restricted funds?
Yes,
Okay.
So I guess that's my question really, is like when? Does that fall under like your purview, Corky? Are you presenting your own budgets? Like, how does that work?
it works like this, like if you remember last year, when we did this, we had that preliminary went through and it was 37.5%. We come back and we say, okay, this is the avenue we'd like to pursue to purchase this door. We can build to building and grounds, and that we have this much in reserve in there to do so. Between Audrey and I, we can present that to you at that second go-around. Here's the reserve. Here's where we think we can take it from to purchase this item because it's a necessity, not just a want.
Okay,
So that's on the undesignated reserves, right?
Correct.
So when we have a discussion at some point in time, I'd like to, I brought this up a few times as a council. There's been discussions before about our reserves are too healthy, and I think we need to decide what these unrestricted reserves need to be set at. As a group, I think we need to decide, like, whatever that number is. We try to maintain that, so each year when we get done with the fiscal year, and if we levied too much per se, then that goes into the unrestricted reserves. And then my hope is then if we had too much go into that particular year, and that could start our basis for the next year, because we didn't spend as much as we said we're gonna do, but we still levied we taxed our citizens for that amount. So I think that needs to go back into the pot and levy that much less for the next year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that that should be part of the conversation, and I think that's things that our constituents are concerned about.
Right. And I talked to Corky about this, and at some point in time, we're gonna be given the number of the unrestricted reserves, correct? Is that correct?
Yes,
Yes.
Yes.
And then, as a group, we say, okay, this is the number. We're gonna try to maintain that number, so if we underspend one year, then we have to replenish it per se, or if we go over, then we can take that unrestricted extra and start the budget process for the following year.
You have to be careful when you look at, like, if you look at the water fund unrestricted reserves, there is a dollar value assigned to assets that are out in the water distribution system. So if you just solely look at the water unrestricted reserves, it makes it look like we have $9.8 million in the water department. But $9 million of that is our water tower that's sitting there, our tank that's sitting there, our water mains that are underground that haven't been depreciated yet. So you have to look. I've learned in the last 6 months, you really have to know what you're looking at there, and it's like in the water funds, the true reserve that I see there are the cash in the bank and the invested funds there. So there's like 800 to 900,000 in the water that I consider a true reserve myself, because you're not gonna sell your water tower
that's
to pay
something-
for a pickup, so.
Yeah.
that's something that we as Audrey and I and others in the department will have to be able to explain that to you, because
Yes.
I concur with Brandon 100%.
Yeah.
Numbers can be misleading unless we can break it down and basically show you cash.
Yeah, well, and I don't think that Delaine's saying that if there's 9,000 that you're looking at that. I think we're saying that we need to understand what the best practice of keeping whatever dollar amounts needs to be where they need to be. But then from there, deciding, is this excess over what we would have,
Yeah.
what we needed, right?
would be-
For the year? Versus, like, we're not trying to say we're trying to find every little dollar to push that towards the tax levy. I think we're just trying to say we want to know what that best practice of having those dollar amounts at, and then looking at what that is over that dollar amount.
Well, and it would be helpful for me, looking 5 years out, this, in the water fund is a good example of, yes, there's almost $1 million sitting there, but we have to paint the south water tower in the next, possibly in 2027. So if I could plan right now for, you're probably gonna have to spend that $1 million on painting that tower in 27. And if we keep breaking even in the water, we're gonna be in trouble in 27.
Can't you put that on the,
Capital improvement.
CIP.
yeah,
I have it on there, but I really don't have you know, we've sat and talked to auditors about what they would recommend a reasonable reserve be, and I haven't heard, I don't know, have you guys heard an answer
I
that
mean,
you?
outside of what like the League of Minnesota Cities has told us, like, is it like 40 to 60 or something like that? Like, we haven't really heard like an accurate number.
Yep.
And I do wonder after talking to auditors and kind of having like what that best practice is. But also, I mean, I think, you know, as part of that, if we know 5 years down the road, we're gonna need to paint something, we should be making sure that we're getting whatever significant increment of that is every year to make sure that that can be done in 27.
Yep, and we have it right now, but, you know, if I know that we want to maintain a annual budget reserve of 50%, I could shoot to keep 700,000 in there even after that tower is painted in 27. So I think it would be helpful for department heads to have that defined reserve goal too.
Yeah.
So,
Absolutely.
all right, we're on page 45 now. Professional fees, this is a substantial increase for my estimate on what it'll cost for that RFP that we're putting out for the public works, street improvements, and you'll see this again in about 60 grand in the water and another 60 grand in the wastewater for everybody's share of what I estimate that whole process will cost once we get the proposals back.
Okay.
And then we, you know, obviously have our general professional services that we utilize throughout the year in the public works, and that's the other 10,000. I should have said at the beginning, on all materials, I tried to apply a 4% inflation increase to each line, just off of what they project inflation will be in 23. So just trying to maintain those line items so they're not slowly going backwards every year.
So can I just want to double check this, the RFP that we have out is to do this full funded study of all of our public works things, right? And then that report's going to help us then to be able to apply from other state funding and federal funding as well as other grants, right?
Yeah.
And that's something that I believe Carrie had mentioned that we would need in order to go forward, right?
Yep.
Okay, I just want that said out loud as we're
Yeah.
having these conversations because it is a significant number, but it's for a good cause as we go forward, so.
Yeah.
But one additional item on that is it will help us prioritize the repairs, where, how long it'll take. So the prioritization will also be a part of that.
Okay, thank you.
Communications, 2,080. It just took the 4% and added it to that. Travel I increased just because we have so many new employees, and this is where their training expenses are coded to. And you know, if we send them to a street maintenance training, their hotel room and mileage and la-di-da is under there. And you know, there is supposed to be a good training for them this spring, and then I don't know what happened to the instructor, but they sent an email saying it was canceled, so there's not much out of there right now. But as soon as that class is available again, I'm looking to get those guys sent off to that. Mileage is pretty low. I haven't spent anything out of it. I just left it where it was. Employment advertising, it seems like we're having to advertise harder and harder every year to find employees, so I increased that to $2,000. Liability insurance I left alone. Workers' compensation, I just left what it was estimating.
The liability, is that showing that it's a credit of $913?
Yes.
For year-to-date?
Yeah,
What's the deal with that?
I don't know, do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head.
Subscriptions and dues, 832. And then the big item you'll see throughout these funds is the central garage. Central garage is essentially a savings account that for every hour we use on a piece of equipment, it goes to the central garage. And then when we need new equipment, it comes out of that central garage 701 fund. And in the proposed, you'll see the last budget we go through is the central garage, and we needed about, if we purchase the equipment in that proposed budget, we need about a 25% increase in funding to that fund. So that's what I put in across all these categories, was to fund the replacement of the loader, and we'll go through those once we get there. On to page 46, so streets and alleys. This is where, if they're making street repairs, if they're grading alleys, if they're anything in the streets or alleys, their time is coded to this. This is a fairly large part of the salary line. And that 286,954 is the calculation that I came up with. Overtime is, obviously all over the place, but I put 920 in there for that. Other departments, like I said before, if they come over and help, their wages come out of there, 443. Private work is 207. We haven't used that lately, but we might this year. Civil projects, 207.
Can I ask why there was a credit of $362.22 for the overtime?
I'd imagine that was some sort of adjustment made at some point, but I don't have a good answer for you.
Okay.
So on to the severance pay, that has gone down to almost nothing, so I lowered that to 0. FICA's automatically calculated, left that what it calculated at. Same with Medicare and para. That health insurance is 10% increase, 52,644. The life insurance I left alone at 273. Miscellaneous supplies for anything that we need in the streets and alleys is 600. Materials, I just added the 4% inflation. So when we buy gravel and blacktop and anything to fix roads or alleys, that's where the materials come out of. I know it's been kind of low the last few years, but that's been mostly because we haven't, 22 was, we didn't have a lot of time to do street and alley work because of the high water event and cleaning up after that. So I'm hoping to get a lot of that work done. A lot of the, the patchweg and blacktop comes out of there. So all the pothole filling, any small tools is 207. If they buy any small hand tools, then it comes out of that fund. And here's another safety expense that those shirts and boots and hard hats come out of. Contractual, if we end up with any contracts, it looks like we had a little bit this year, but there's been 0 in the past, so I left that at 0.
What would be contractual?
If we contracted Right Rock to fix a patch for us, because we didn't have time or a contractor to do any work that we would have done otherwise, I guess. Liability insurance, left at what it was at. Same with workers' compensation. So the uniform allowances, the union negotiated $200 or $250, whatever it is right now, for their pants and whatnot that they
For
get.
workers' compensation,
Oh,
Uniform.
uniforms,
for
sorry.
uniforms.
Uh,
Okay. Can I ask real quick on the comp? So you have it at 22, 18, 20, and then you have it at 11? Am I not reading that right?
Yeah,
Why is it so
should
low?
look closer at that one. And then so the uniforms is 2,000, and then the central garage charges is increased, off that 25%. This year's actuals aren't a good representation, cause I haven't had time to send over the hourly, I have like 4 months to get caught up on those equipment, for central garage. So that's why those actuals are so low right now. There'll be once I get those reports done and turned into Audrey, those funds will get pulled out and sent to the 701.
And Brandon, can you explain to me again what that covers, that 138?
That's the maintenance, so that's the fund. So for every hour we put on our payloader, we assign, we'll just say $40 an hour to that payloader. So when I run a report on our time, on the time card software that I use, the guys enter that they worked 4 hours on the loader, and then it sends $160 to the central garage to replace that piece of equipment in the future. And all of the fuel for the equipment comes out of there. All of the repairs to the equipment come out of there. So if we purchase a new alternator, or like the engine we had to put in the street sweeper, it comes out of that central garage fund. So it's future purchases on equipment and continuing maintenance and fuel in it to operate the equipment. So I kind of, I know it's labeled as an expenditure here, but you're pulling it out of the general fund to fund another fund, basically, is what you're doing. So.
Okay, and so
So is this-
every department on here then does that?
And
I see that
I-
you have that for your general fund, and then now for streets and alleys.
And there's some in wastewater. There's a little bit in wastewater, and there's a little bit in water. I believe, does Park pull anything into central garage?
Yes.
So, if the park uses the public works loader, for an hour, it goes into the central garage fund. It was set up a long time ago to try and keep the equipment replacements funded without having to come up with the funds once it was time to purchase, basically.
Okay, I mean,
So
I
this
know
operates
you,
as a reserve fund, basically.
Yep.
Yep, this
And
is a
it's
savings
it's
account
this
essentially.
department charging the city's general fund an hourly rate for the use of that equipment in order to eventually replace it.
Yep,
or pay for repairs, or pay for fuel,
Yep.
yep,
right?
yep.
Okay, no, and I know that you've explained that once, I didn't realize that, like, every department was charging to that, so, right. And you said that increase of 25% was really necessary to pay for something coming up?
Yeah, I'll show you when you get to the 701 fund. I like the way that those funds operate. It's just clear at the end. There's not all mumbled together like the 101 fund, where your expenses and revenue are all intertwined. So
Okay,
snow and ice, this is one that can be really high or really low depending on the winter. So I just average everything out, and if we're not plowing snow, we're trimming trees. So it comes out of one or the other, and one will end up heavy and one will end up light. So in the regular salary, 43,677, overtime. You know, I tried to make an effort to, not just run 8 to 5 on snow removal, so the overtime was a little bit higher in the last couple years for the snow removal, or, you know, it seemed to work out pretty well, to send the guys out at 4 in the morning, and then we would plow until we were done, so, that's why that overtime line is a little bit higher than maybe in 2001. Other departments, so if the water guys come and help plow snow, the labor will come out of there.
Since, for salaries, regular salaries, 22, you spent 70,000.
Yeah,
And already this year, we're trending, you know, probably,
Close to that.
you know, so just a question, as a rule of thumb, is it better to budget on the last couple of years' trend, or is it, I mean, I know it's hard to say what the snow is gonna be, but I mean, if we've had 2 years of 70 plus,
yeah.
is it better for our, for when we're levying to get the dollars to be higher than it is to come up short, or?
So I budget, I add all of these categories together, and I know our labor's gonna cost, we'll save $500,000.
Okay,
So if this one's 20,000 in the hole, the street and alley or the tree trimming will be 20 heavy, so at the end of the year, it's gonna grab that 20,000 from that other to offset, so I don't get super particular about being right on the dot. I
Okay.
try to budget accurately across the 10 funds, if that
so then
makes sense to you.
from your experience and from the overall salaries for all the different departments, that we've been coming pretty close to what you've been,
Yeah, it's gonna be, you know, it's gonna be pretty close. You know, we usually have a little bit left over in the last year or two, cause we haven't been able to stay fully staffed. But I've tried to keep the budgeting line items at full staff, so that if we can get to that point, it's actually there. But I try not to, you know, if we try and just get perfect on each category, it's never gonna happen,
Right.
so I just come up with a lump sum and I allocate it across the
for
board.
example, if we levied for, X amount of salary and we didn't spend that salary, then that goes into unrestricted reserves, right? That excess?
I believe so.
Yes, it would.
Okay,
But, unless the city administrator, or you guys assign it to something else, and if it wasn't predetermined in a budget, then you guys would have to approve the if you wanted to assign that 100,000 to, air conditioner at the arena or whatever, kind of a deal.
I got one question regarding the snow and ice removal. Is it possible to throw in here, or would that go elsewhere, to budget a one-time snow event? What I'm looking at is, like last was a late fall where we got that rain and it turned to ice and then it turned to snow, and it happened like on a close to a weekend. So basically what I'm getting at is the crew didn't go out and move that until like Monday, and by that time it got really cold. So then we had
That thick.
ruts kind of dealing with all winter. So I'm wondering if we do have an event like that, if we could budget a one-time yearly for that scenario.
I mean, I'm not sending people out because it's a Saturday. So, I mean, I guess.
I'm not sure the timeline when all this happened, but I know it was a while before.
I know, but what you're insinuating is that I waited till Monday because I
Well,
didn't.
no, I'm not,
'Cause I didn't.
I didn't mean it that way.
But that's the way, that's the reality of it, Dale. Right? Because if, you know, I'm not making decisions on plowing because we're going to, you know, I don't wanna pay 8 hours of overtime on a Saturday. You know, I always say that the timing of a storm it makes the public work director a hero or a zero.
Yep.
And it's 100% true.
Yeah.
If I see a storm that's gonna stop at midnight or 4 in the morning, you are the best guy that's ever plowed snow in the city. But if it doesn't stop until 10 o'clock at morning, you're the biggest idiot that's ever run the town. And, you know, you just, it's the truth of the situation on snow removal. We're never gonna be able to get people 100% happy on snow removal.
Well, yeah, I get that, but I'm just,
I mean,
But I think, Dale, one of the things that's important is the Public Works Director makes the decisions based on the snow. If we have to deal with that, we can look at some undesignated reserves to handle it. In the end, like Brandon says, we're looking at the bottom line overall.
And didn't we have some issues with like equipment this year that delayed some stuff? I don't think it was necessarily,
I don't know.
something broke down or something, right?
We've had so many
Computer or
equipment
something.
issues,
Yeah.
they're all blending into each other,
Bad
so.
wind, because I remember there was a circle of like, we won't be plowing here because of the wind, and I was like, I'm
So I-
driving there.
Yeah.
Are we at para yet? Did we go over that one?
So para,
The 0126.
yeah, that looks like it's light too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, if the actual for 2000 or 22 was 5,000 and the year-to-date's 5,000 plus.
I mean, I'll have to look at it across the funds too.
Sure.
That's probably pretty similar to the salary lines, as long as it's fully funded through all categories.
Okay.
It's not the end of the world.
So did we come up with a, I remember I think I asked this question last year, we really didn't have, if I remember what you were telling me last year, we didn't really have designated emergency snow routes, I think, at some, did we change that over the last year, or, I mean, do we have a map that has designated emergency snow
I
routes now?
do that, so that plow route map that is
You posted on the Facebook, didn't you?
it's a web-based, so if anybody clicks the link, it's color coded with an emergency route, or I believe I called the emergency. So the emergency route right now by the villa is to their service garage, where a resident would have to be picked up, over to Barrett, out to Central Avenue, and then to downtown, and then Woodland Avenue to the hospital, basically. And then, you know, Highway 2 is technically an emergency route, and Fairfax. I tried to pick the main arteries to the.
So, what is the policy then on even a weekend we get a snow? I mean, I know we kind of talked about it, but do you just send people out for the emergency route sometimes and that's it? Maybe?
Yeah, there was an event last year where we got 8 to 10 inches, and at the 3 to 4 inch mark, they took the grader out and maintained the emergency route until the event had kind of settled down a little bit, and then they went out from there, and there was just one guy kind of
Okay.
continuously circling that route, so. And it seemed to work pretty well, so. Health insurance, I increased that the 10%. Life insurance was left alone, and miscellaneous supplies was raised at 4% up to $520. Materials, I raised 4%. Most of that is the slip sand for the road that we spread on the road. Liability insurance, $889, left that one alone. And averaged the workers' compensation at $5,568. And the central garage expense line was increased at 25%. On to page 48 for the tree trimming. So this is a good example of, you saw that the snow removal was 20
Yeah.
high, this one's 20 short, so. So we budgeted at 40,790, overtime at 105, you know, if a tree blows over on a Saturday, it'll come out of there. FICA at 2,529 and Medicare at that 591 para.
So a question then, so if we get through the winter and we overspent our budget on snow removal, then is the decision made in the spring, we just don't really do that much tree trimming for the normal trimming stuff? Is that how that works, or does that?
You know, if we still have time, you know, the way that it balances out more is if it's you make it to January 1st without any snow, the guys will be out trimming trees until January 1st.
Oh.
And that labor line gets hit pretty hard. And then if it snows, then you start pulling more out of this.
So you trim trees like on the boulevards and stuff through the winter?
Yep.
And so then in the spring, it's pretty much done then?
Yeah, you typically don't want to trim trees once they bloomed. It's the proper time to trim trees is when they're dormant.
All right.
Contracted services. That is the 50,000 that we designate for private property trees that will be spent, but then will be assessed over whatever time frame and come back eventually. So if we send a letter to a resident that their tree has to be removed, they have we'll say 2 weeks to remove it. If they don't remove it, we hire a contractor. We usually get a couple bids from the local tree removal companies. We pay for the tree to be removed, and then the assessment is put on their next property tax statement for the removal of the trees. So, you know, we hit the Sampson's edition pretty hard last year. We're trying to hit the Woods edition pretty hard this year, but I don't know, it seems like for every diseased tree you cut down, 2 more pop up out of the middle of nowhere. So seems like a never ending battle, but we're still picking away at those. So that's what that's for. Liability insurance, $200, workers' compensation of $1,300, and that 25% increase to the central garage for the equipment used for trimming trees and fuel and whatnot. On to page 49. So street light, the salary is mostly the garbage guys when they get done with their route going and repairing bulbs or picking up light poles that get hit by cars or whatnot. Little bit of overtime if like a light pole gets hit after hours and we have to go get it, of that $110. FICA of $810, Medicare of $189, para of $979, the 10% increase to the health insurance of $25.96, small life insurance $14. Nothing in repairs, equipment, materials. I raised that 4% for, you know, if we have to buy light poles or bulbs, it comes out of that materials. Liability insurance, I kind of left the loan at 107. Workers' compensation of $759. Utilities.
Can I just ask on that one? So you have some 58 on the worker comp, but like before it's 976, 851, and 1,062. So does that go down? Or is this another thing where you would even this out with the other?
It evens across the funds.
Okay.
Utilities, you know, I've estimated that 155,000. Still trying to figure out how in 21 we went from 150,000 down to 116,000, because I know I know utility rates didn't go down, but, you know, we're at 60% of the year, so we're probably gonna land more at like 100,000, so I should probably drop that one
Does that
a
have to
little
do with
bit.
anything with those LEDs they put in the neighborhood? I mean, I heard pros and cons, yeah, you're saving money, but then utility
Replacing them
rates
costs.
go up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's possible. You know, most of the LEDs that were put in, just from talking to Doug Sullivan, that's been around forever working on the LED lights, most of them were a grant that the city got like 15 years ago, so, you know, I don't, did they,
Well, I'm
in
just wondering,
in 21, they put a bunch of LEDs in the neighborhoods?
yeah, cause they had all those incandescent ones or whatever, and they switched them all over to LEDs.
But did they, so I'm unaware, did they lower our rate at that time?
That I don't know.
I highly doubt it, cause
No.
we pay by the
Out of the goodness of their
fixture,
hearts.
Okay,
for those, so cause all of those corner lights aren't individually metered, we just pay for
Right.
$6 a month per unit, and I almost guarantee when they changed them, they didn't change our rate per unit. So,
Okay.
Was the understanding of, I think we had talked about this originally, where the LEDs cost significant amount more,
yeah,
but was it really saving us money in the end?
Over 10 years, it was supposed to yield a break even, I thought.
I think they probably do, it's just,
Did they last longer?
they do last longer than a standard incandescent. But, you know, an incandescent bulb for our downtown lights is $150, and if one of those LEDs gets knocked down along Highway 2, just the head is $2,600. So you can replace a lot of bulbs for a head unit.
Well, that's what I'm saying, like, so is it really saving us money at the end
I
of the
mean,
day?
it's probably responsible being green too at the end of the day, right? If you wanna be a good steward of the earth.
Yeah,
So, I'll probably lower that utility line slightly just to, it's 155 is probably a little bit high. I'll give that one a little bit harder look here. Contracted repairs, we had in 22, when I took over, we had a lot of stuff that was, hodgepodge together that I had some electricians help us fix properly, so that's why we had a big catch-up of that $8,000, but I'm unaware of any needed contracted services, so left that at 1,000 and raised the central garage that 25% to 2,430. On to the street sanitation, so page 50, this is all your street sweeping, so your labor for your street sweeper, and, is that 29,000, 15, you know, with the 2 street sweepers, we'll probably end up with less labor out of, we'll say, the street maintenance, street and alley fund, and probably some more out of this fund this year, but I figured we'd just adjust it next year when we see what those numbers actually are. They don't get much overtime with the, street sweeping that's normally on their regular schedule, so I left that alone. Same with the FICA and Medicare and para. Health insurance was increased at 10%. Miscellaneous supplies is always in that $100, so I left that alone. Liability insurance, I left that alone at $156. Same with workers' compensation of $1174, and increased the central garage 25% for funding the 701 fund.
are we, just to double check on here, so that health insurance, is that again gonna be one of those evened out ones? Because you went from like 6,000 to 4,000 to 3,800.
Yeah.
Is there anywhere on the end where it just pulls all of that together to see what the actual?
I don't think
I
there
don't
is
think so. We'll
there?
have to
We have to manually
give
add
that
them.
number to you when it's ready.
Okay.
Well, can't you just go in and check what the line item is in all of the accounts? I mean, doesn't it aggregate? If you call up budget number 0131, doesn't it give you a total?
I can print out a report that would have that total, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. It would be nice to
Okay.
see that number versus the actual versus what it's been.
And
last
that
couple
number
years.
will be available once we have those health coverage premiums available.
On to garbage hauling. So this is when the guys are out picking up garbage, the 2 garbage guys' salaries come out of their daily. That's the, I did increase that one 20% just to account for, the extra time it's gonna take if we, have increased utilization on the cans.
What do you think the increased utilization will be?
I,
Because if, then
like,
it's looking like you're like at 23%, I feel like it's going to be a large amount of the town.
I honestly think if
I
I'm
think you
probably
go either
gonna
way.
get called out on this when I'm way off, but we're at 3 to 4%. I'll be shocked if we get over 10.
I guess
Myself.
me being a resident, it's cheaper for me the way it's proposed to continue to use the bags than to buy the can.
Yeah. And I honestly think people are creatures of habit, and we have programmed our residents to bring their garbage to the transfer station for 20 years now.
And I've just talked to a lot of people that are willing to pay a little bit more to have the can and the ease of not having bags piling up, and just having it in a can and wheeling it down.
But talk is cheap, and
Right.
I'll be shocked if you get over 10% utilization of the community, and I hope I'm wrong, but that's where my head's
And I
at.
also think that's why we're kind of doing an educated guess
That's
here,
why
right?
I
And
feel it's a
then-
good idea to throw 40 grand at it and not 400,000,
Yes.
just to see where
What
we
kind of
land, and hopefully the guys are overwhelmed and we need a bigger truck.
And what was that 10%, Brandon? I wrote that down. I got odds on that.
Over under odds, Corky.
I'm going over. I'm agreeing. I think it'll be over. No, we had a bit of a discussion on that, and it seems like it's somewhat like the pool. We got to give it a chance. It'll cost us some money, but we got to find out.
And, you're gonna have a new public work director that'll get in there and maybe see something I don't see, and maybe have some experiences that I don't have, and you don't know where his head's gonna be either, so.
I'd like to see some like hardcore communication sent out and some outreach and some education about being available.
Marketing?
Yeah.
There's an idea.
You'll
Looks
have your
like
chance. That's coming.
the 105 note of 3.5% looks like a 2002 note I forgot to delete, so I'll delete that one. Salaries for other departments, most of that is cleanup week, when other departments come to help throw garbage during cleanup week. Depends on how heavy the debris is to how much of that gets pulled in, so. FICA I kinda left alone where it was calculated on its own, same with Medicare and para. Health insurance increased by that 10%. I left the life insurance at 109, and miscellaneous supplies, I increased that 4% at 208. Materials, so this is pretty much all the garbage bags we purchase, so, that is the, 7,280. safety expenses out of those 2 employees if they buy any safety, stuff. Landfill fees, this
So,
is,
I'm sorry, when you say materials, that's the garbage bags we buy?
yeah,
So it looks like we're spending about 7,000
on bags, yeah,
on bags here. And what's our revenue on the bags?
22.
So we're about $5,000 short on breaking even then on that?
Revenue's 22.
22,000.
The cost is 7,000.
22,000, yeah.
Okay, yeah, all right.
I can see the
Yeah.
So then we're not
We're not in the hole.
no more.
Yeah, other than the labor it takes to grab the
Right.
bags, so it's a bigger picture than just eye for an eye, but.
Right.
The landfill fees, the only landfill fees we pay every year is, when we bring the cleanup debris in, so that fluctuates a little bit on how heavy cleanup is, but I averaged it at that 16,000. Garbage billing fees, so that's for like paying for the bills that we send for water on the, we'll call it the garbage share of the materials for billing for water. Public information is when we advertise for, we'll just, say for, cleanup week. If we wanna advertise heavy for the increased services, I should maybe bump that up $1,000 or something. But liability insurance, I just left at what it automatically calculates, and same with workers' compensation. Uniform allowances at the allotted union agreement, and the 25% increase on the central garage. The 40,000 that you see there is the quote I got for can dumpers and cans to add to our current truck.
So, okay, so that includes the price of the cans that we're going to get to trial
Yep.
this with?
Yep, and then we'll be reimbursed through the purchase of the can. So the cans will be about $150 to $200 a piece. And then the only way I really see it working is like a 2023 sticker that they would stick to the side of the can, and we would charge them whatever X amount for the annual service. Just because if we're gonna have it an elected service like we're discussing, the guy's gotta know who's got an active can and who doesn't. So we'll have to make a City of Crookston sticker. We'll call it a permit can number 1 or something like that. There is scanning software. It's just so expensive. The cans come with barcodes on them, and you can buy a handheld scanner that the guy would scan it, and you could do month to month, and it would say this can's inactive. But when you get into that, you got $25,000, $30,000 annual subscription fees to the software. It's just.
Why isn't it just like a cable box where you buy the cable and then utilize the can or box, and every year you get a new charge until you return that can? Why wouldn't it be something like that, so you wouldn't have to worry about what's inactive and active?
So how are you gonna keep, these cans are available on the free market. So if we're all honest people, yes, that works. But if I can go buy, let's say we decide to buy, I don't know, we'll just call it Brandon Carlson brand can, but then I can go buy it on Amazon for $150 instead of paying whatever fee for the can. Then it's just, I mean,
Do you think with branded cans, I guess my other question is like other cities, like how are they, is it just because it's utilized across the board that it's not an issue?
It's pretty uncommon to have an elected can service. When I talk to Foston, everybody, you pay for it whether you use it or not. And same with East Grand Forks. Thief River Falls is the same as us right now. They have bags and they don't have cans. They don't have an elected cleanup week. They have 10 stickers they get per household, and you stick it to the mattress and you in a certain part of the year, and you call City Hall and say, I got a mattress out. I don't hate that idea just because it spreads out cleanup week, so it's not 1 week, throw all your stuff out, throw couches in your backyard until cleanup week. And, you know, if we did 10 stickers per household, they could call in, we'd go get their mattress. Probably the 2 garbage guys could maintain the cleanup week by themselves. And then it would also limit everybody to the same guidelines, and you wouldn't have these houses that you're having to leave half the garbage because they threw half the house out on the burn. And that's the one thing that I don't like about a spring and a fall cleanup, is it promotes garbage hoarding. People will throw a couch in their backyard because they don't want to pay $5 at the transfer station, because they know if it sits there for 3 months, they can put it out on the burn for free, and then their neighbor has to look at that couch in the backyard for 4 months. So if we gave everybody a sticker for, we'll say 5 items a year, and they stuck it to the whatever item and called City Hall, and then we went and got it within 2 days or whatever, I like that idea. And that'll be, you know, when Charles gets here, and kind of try and get him up to speed on where I was going and let him make his own decisions. I'll fill him in on all that, but it's just, it gets kind of difficult when it's an elected service
Yeah.
like this.
I just wonder if you brand the can or something. I mean,
White label the can.
yeah, or something, and, you know, if you have the rando, like 10 or 2 people who are gonna buy their own can off Amazon or whatever,
Yeah.
they still have to have that branded piece or whatever, right? And I just wonder if that's an easier way of, I mean, at the end of the day, is it gonna cost more to like just try to figure out who is paying this month or this year versus who's not? Or is it something where they're responsible for that can, and every year they get recharged that whatever annual fee until they return that can, or, you know what I mean? I'm just thinking, we work smarter, not harder on the situation too.
And my one question also is like, so is it a one-time fee for this can? If you buy this can, say my family gets this can, is it a one-time fee?
I would think it's an annual. I don't think it's a one-time fee.
Because I think most cities, it's a one-time fee to buy the can, and then you just pay, it's in your monthly, like, water and utilities bill that you're paying for garbage.
Isn't the can branded? Don't you have a municipal sticker on the?
I think it's, I mean, I don't know if it's a sticker or like painted, or, you know, it's definitely white labeled, but I'm just wondering, like, are we budgeting, people are buying and paying for this can each $100 a year, or is it you're paying $100, you move into a house and it's?
I guess the way I was gonna handle it was gonna be a one-time can purchase, and then we'll say an additional fee on the water bill monthly.
Because a lot of people are already paying this fee and not taking advantage of the.
Yeah, but the drive-by fee is gonna remain $6, but the can, if you get an additional can, we would have we'll call it a can fee on the water bill for the elected people that wanted it, and it would add another $10. It's looking like the can fee at an elected service rate is gonna have to be in that, you know, $16 total, so an additional $10 to the $6 to kind of sustain itself, so. But we can get into the weeds of all that when we
Yeah, no, I just wanted to
decide
understand like
that.
how you were budgeting that.
So that was the last item on the garbage hauling. Weed control is just spraying weeds in the sidewalks and wherever we need to, parking lots. And I needed to remove my note on the 101, the labor line there. That's an old note there.
So since we bought that Ranger, because we bought that, I think specifically for weed.
Yeah, that's
Control is
you know,
that-
that's a park, this is
What?
separate. These are the two garbage guys that walk around with the hand sprayers,
Oh.
spraying the sidewalks and stuff downtown and city parking lots. And I don't know where Jake budgets his weed control out of. I assume it's in park fund, I would guess, but you'll have to ask Jake that. This is separate. This is just for our sidewalks, our street department weed control. I know they did spray for dandelions and everything this year. I saw, Scott out spraying for dandelions a couple times this year, so if that's what you were asking.
I was just asking if we're getting a decent amount of, use out of that Ranger since we bought it here a few years ago, because remember that one year everybody was talking about weeds, and then haven't heard that much talk this year or even last summer.
Yeah.
So either we're doing a really good job or, but not your deal. I know about, I can talk to Jake about it.
Okay. The FICA I left alone, and Medicare, para, the health insurance, I increased that 10%. Miscellaneous supplies, I increased that 4%. Liability insurance, I left where it was at, and same with workers' compensation. We don't use any large equipment, so there's not much central garage that comes out of there. So that is my share of the general 101 fund. So the next fund is or department is the water fund, the 601. This is where we're gonna have conversations on either cutting back, improvements or purchases or increasing rates. I'm honestly, after running through last year's expenses and, seeing where this budget lands, I'm kinda disappointed I didn't raise water rates a little bit with the sewer rates last year, 'cause it's not pretty at the end of this fund, but, there's a 10% increase in rates calculated into all these revenues. Even with that, this fund is short 100, and we'll get to that on the last page. I'll point that out when we get there, but, so there'll have to be bigger discussions on revenues and expenses in this department, but, so the refunds and reimbursements, that's the deposits that we get on accounts when a renter sets up a new account. Principal certified, I honestly, if I said I knew what that was right offhand, I'd be lying to you. Do you know what that is, Audrey?
No, I do
No.
not.
Okay.
Well, is that the principal that you have deposited in an investment account?
I don't believe so. The interest on investments, that's
Right, budget.
the interest that we get off of the invested funds in the 601. Allocated interest, believe that's the same.
And is that allocated interest supposed to be a credit?
What, yeah,
Yeah,
so,
because it's accruing on an investment.
yeah,
I'm just asking because it's not in parentheses.
it
yeah, but, so our investment's lost.
It's not.
So,
16?
in
Oh,
22,
I see.
that's right, Audrey? In 22, that invested in, because we had to budget for a loss on the interest rates on those investments last year. And, so when you're entering these into, you actually have to enter these revenues. So when I enter the revenue of 467,500 on the residential water there, you have to actually enter it as a negative number. So these are I believe the investments were actually going backwards those years, and you can see that they've gone ahead a little bit this year. So I'll make a note to check that. I might be wrong on
Yeah.
that, but
No, that's accurate, Brandon. What happens is you have to value your investments as of the time of the evaluation and the market value if you were to sell those investments. If you had $1,000 at 1%, and now the interest rate on that $1,000 is 5%, you've actually suffered a loss if you were to sell it because you couldn't sell it for its book value. That's what you have to enter in there. You don't have negative cash, but if you were to sell the investment, it would generate a negative number because you would not be getting back the full value of that investment.
okay. Moving on.
So last year, we raised a lot of fees and stuff on the revenue part, right? So,
The only revenue lines that were increased, there was no water increase last year. The sewer rate was raised from $1.75 to $3.50.
okay,
And when that's the 602 fund, when we get there, you'll see the jump in revenue
all
in
right,
that
so,
fund.
and then you said, we should have discussions on maybe the water, or,
Yeah, when we get, if we get, I think we need to start paying closer attention to the auditor's report too, because when that comes out, they depreciate your assets at the end of the year. And, it's not as simple as just looking at, we spent $1.3 million and we brought in $1.3 million. Okay, we're breaking even. Well, our tower and our water main and our tractors depreciated $200,000 this year, so we're really not breaking even. And even with this the way it is, it's not breaking even with the expenses this year. So I think it needed like a 16 or an 18% increase in revenue just to break even on this year's expenses. And then this is at 10% right now.
so Corky or Brandon, or when do we have these discussions on that?
I think we'll have that discussion when we get all the individual department presentations here. And then we talk about, here's where our budget sits, here's where our revenues are, where can we increase revenues, where can we reduce expenditures, when all of the department presentations are done.
Okay,
And when is the audit done?
That's an excellent question. We do not know at this point when it will be completed. The auditors have run into some significant issues with the books at this point. Audrey, do you have anything further on that, or does that seem to summarize?
That summarizes the situation that we are in. At this time, our hard deadline is September 30th.
what is your, thoughts on that'll be met? Is that, we gotta meet it no matter what, or is the auditors on pace to make that deadline?
We're not sure about that. What happens is that that's a hard deadline. And if in fact we do not meet that deadline, there may be some financial consequences for the city. They are making every effort, believe me, and we're getting them materials that hadn't been produced previously. We're creating them or finding them and getting them as fast as we can. So we expect to meet the deadline, but I can't tell you with 100% certainty that we will be able to do so. Audrey, do you have anything further on that?
I do not have anything to add.
To clarify, the auditor had findings And we have until September 30th to clarify what those finding situations are, or?
No,
No.
there is no audit completed at this point. So there are no findings made at this point because the audit's not done. All the materials they needed, we are getting them as quickly as we can to them. But there are significant numbers of materials they want that hadn't been created.
That's not a good scenario.
No, but they're doing everything they can, and so are we. Audrey and her staff, as well as myself, are getting them everything we can as quickly as possible. We do basically have 6 weeks.
Okay, on to the sale materials and supplies. That's if a contractor needs a valve and we have it, we sell it to them. That's revenue that we eventually just purchase the part again, but that's where that revenue comes in. The residential water, 467,500 is off that slight increase that I have in here. Apartments is increased off the 88,000 to 99,000. Commercial water increased to 385,000, and industrial water raised to about $500,000. Hookup charges, that's if a new house is built and they aren't on an incentive program, they get charged the hookup fees. We don't have very many of those very often, but I kind of left that one alone where it was at. Connection and reconnection fees, that is the fee that we charge when an account transfers from one tenant to another. I budgeted that at 8,000, we're at 9,000 this year. That could maybe go up to $2,000, but it's probably close enough.
Does that, can I just ask, is that another one of those accounts that is added up totally, or is that just that account?
That's just that. This is just the revenue side of the water, so
Okay.
I should probably increase that one to
Okay.
$10,000.
Brandon?
Yeah.
If we, in our discussions, are talking about a significant increase, would that, let's say it's 18%.
Yeah.
Would that also impact commercial, or do they have a separate arrangement?
No, that would, I mean, it depends on how you decided to structure the increase. I mean, in looking at our base rate, a lot of communities have a substantially higher base for their utilities, and you know, obviously they do that because it's known income. You don't need any consumption to because then it covers your base costs, and then any consumption over that is gravy on top. But I don't know. When we get into that, I kind of wanted to see where, part of this is, $300,000 a year is spent on water main improvements. So you don't have to touch water rates. You can start assessing those improvements to the street improvements. So but we all know where those conversations go. And it's kind of, I'm kind of looking for direction on where you guys see most appropriate. I feel it's more appropriate to be assessed to the street improvement, but it's also like pulling teeth assessing properties.
So, was that last year was that on the sewer, or what was those graphs that you put out for like cities like ours, and we were at the way bottom? Was that on the sewer?
That was water and sewer.
So we increased the sewer last year based on that graph, right, but not the water, is that?
Correct, yeah.
So then, do you think you could have one for just water instead of broken out based on other communities and how we set for charging the residents on?
I don't think I've gotten the 23 rate report yet, but I will get it here pretty soon. You know, even with our increase to 350, we're still the lowest sewer rate in the state of Minnesota for a municipality our size. There was one smaller, but they didn't treat gray water, they only treated stormwater. So even with our increase, it's just, you know, I wanted to get to the point where we were doing inflation increases and not hitting these people with 20%. I was hoping that we were close to that. It just, in running these budgets, it doesn't look like we're quite there, but, you know, yes, we are still we're the cheapest water and we're the cheapest wastewater, even at our rate increase
We're the cheapest water, and we got the best water in Minnesota because we won that award.
Yeah, we're gonna send another one to the state too. We're gonna try and win it again.
So yeah, so when we come to that discussion, it would be helpful if you, and will you have some proposals on what your thoughts are?
Yeah, I'll put together another slideshow for you guys and come up with where I think we should go or what our options are, and let you guys decide if you want to assess or if you want to raise rates or what you want to do. But I'll put that together for you. You know, that's the time that having somebody coming into the public works director position is going to help me. I haven't had time to do those type of things in the last year, and it'll allow me time to do those things. So,
Okay.
collection charges and NSF. So this is obviously any check that comes back NSF, but the majority of this is when a tenant goes 2 months without paying their water bill, we have to legally hang a door hanger on their door, and we charge them $20 to hand deliver each account that door hanger. So the majority of that revenue is that $20. We have about 100 door hangers that we hang monthly. It rotates back to our normals month to month, and we hand out about 100 monthly. Because once they get the card delivered to their house, they have to pay the bill in full before, or they get shut off. So then once they pay it in full, it takes them 2 months to get back on the list, so.
So legally, we can't do it electronically, we have to do the door hanger, there's no.
Yeah, the law states that it has to be hung on the door, and Otter Tail and Great Plains are held to the same standard. So you'll see door hangers for Otter Tail and Great Plains too, but yep, it's stated in the state statute or whatnot that it has the requirements for notifications. I think that requirement is in the cold weather rule, I believe. Penalty charges is the $4. So when you don't pay your bill the first month, you get charged $4. So 99% of the time the water bill is due on the 5th. If you pay on the 6th, you got a $4 late fee on there. So that's the penalty charge, adjustments, billing.
So a question, and maybe you guys already do, but I just don't know. Is the water department set up for electronic withdrawal if somebody wants to do that? So-
Yeah, they can. We have an ACH form that they give us a voided check, and then it's drawn on the due date every month. You can do it through the online third party too. The fees are a little bit higher than the one, but our Encode software sends out a batch on whatever day Lynn produces it. It draws it from the account, and then it automatically goes on. So you'll see a bill if people have an auto draft, it says do not pay auto draft on it. And then we will, if we try and draw one time and there's not funds there, we'll try and draw the next month. But once it fails 2 months in a row, we just automatically pull them off. And they have to come in and sign up again after that, once the bill is paid in full. But yes, ACH is possible.
Okay.
You could take it off a card, but you have to use the third-party site to use a card. But we can auto draft out of a checking or savings account for free.
Okay.
Backflow penalties, there's a state backflow program, so if somebody doesn't test their backflow device within a certain period, we can fine them $50. We never usually have to get that far after our notice. They usually get them tested. The water insurance line and revenue is the $1 per month on every utility bill that covers from the main to the shut-off valve to repair if it leaks. And the city only owns the water main in the city of Crookston. The property owners are responsible from the connection at the main into the house. So this insurance is sometimes confusing to people. They think we own the service line because we have this insurance policy, but we truly only own the water main. And same with the sewer services. We only own the mains in the town or
So
own and
people's
operate.
homeowners insurance, they can get to cover that, right, do you think? Or-
There's a separate,
riders.
you'll see, there's separate policies.
I didn't really understand the backflow penalty. Can you tell me what that is?
So the backflow, so the great state of Minnesota requires us to regulate whether or not backflow devices are tested annually. By law, they have to be tested annually. So on boilers, on pools, on anything that could create a situation where contaminated water would siphon back into the potable water, they have to have a backflow device.
So on residential areas.
Residential and commercial.
So how do you know whether they have one or not, or do they?
We went through and did the best inventory we could 5 years ago. We went into houses that, you could see on the auditor's site who has boilers and whatnot. And, we know that the American Inn and Crookston Inn have pools, so they have to legally have a backflow device on them. The newer boilers are self-contained, so they're not hooked to the potable water system. They're glyco systems, so then you don't have to worry about those. We have a software, it's called OpWorks, that we use, that it gives Lynn in our office. We update the due date every year. She gets an email when it's due. If she hasn't gotten a report that says it's passed, she sends out a letter giving them 30 days to complete the testing. If they don't get back to us in that 30 days, then we put the $50 on their
So they
account.
have to hire like a plumbing company to come and do that?
Yeah. So they have to hire, and it's gotten to be such a pain for the plumbers to maintain those licenses. There isn't a local plumber that does it anymore. So they have Lunseth of Grand Forks does it, and it's like Griffin's or something out of Fargo are the only two that do it right now.
So it's possible that could be places, residential places that have these, that have a backflow, but aren't, or are supposed to have a backflow but don't. Is that possible?
I mean, yes, it's possible, but we did a sweep through town, and we have, in the first few years, it actually worked pretty well, because the ones that we didn't catch, that when we were sending out letters, the ones that we didn't know about, people accidentally send us the reports of backflow devices that we didn't know about. So then we would just add them to the system. I would have to look at our report of our assets for backflow preventers. I think Lynn keeps an eye on about 300 of them a year. And they're like 100 of them are out at UMC. UMC has them on every fixture. If it's in place and it's tied to the water system, even if your boiler is inactive, you still have to maintain it.
Huh.
So, but I mean, we don't really, the only revenue we track on that is if we actually have to charge them the $50. We don't have anybody licensed to test them or do any of that, so that's what that line item is for and why it's so small. Page 2, I think I was done on page 1, wasn't I? Yeah. Garbage billing charges. It's pretty consistently in that 3,300, so I left that alone.
Can you say more about that? So what would that charge be for? Like how does that come through?
I honestly don't have a lot of knowledge on that one. I would have to look at that one.
So, yeah, so garbage is under water fund?
Well,
Garbage
so
billing, water
it's billed on the utility billing. And
Oh, okay.
so I'll have to look at that revenue line and see where that revenue is actually coming in, because I don't know that one right offhand.
Okay. And the miscellaneous bulk.
I'm gonna have to look at that one too.
Okay.
That one looks like it's high right now. Then labor for hire is if we charge out, if we have a nuisance resident that will just keep letting their water meters freeze and our guys have to go out after hours, we get to a point where we just start charging them for our time just because it gets to be a lot. So that's that labor for hire line revenue. So Lynn would we would send that at accounts receivable, so Audrey or Vance would bill that time out usually.
Okay.
So that's the gist of the revenue in the 101 water fund. So there's a proposed revenue of 1.55 million. All right, so water supply pumping, this is the well field and where the majority of, so our labor for going out there and checking the wells daily and whatnot come out of there. I had my 22 3.5% colas in there, notes I had to remove. But the water seemed fairly decent, so I didn't make big adjustments to the labor lines. They're the same as last year's budget, so the Medicare and all that will kind of follow suit. Looks like I forgot to raise the health insurance 10% on that one.
Can I ask why the para in 21 was a credit of 29,000?
I don't have a good answer for you on that. Can look into it. So life insurance kind of left the same. Miscellaneous supplies kind of left the same. Parts equipment. And repairs equipment. Looks like I've probably coded, I should have been sending some of those repairs to the 221 instead of the 220, because that was pretty much zero. I'll fix that. I left that at zero, and the average for the well repairs is around 15,000, and I added the 4% to that to account for inflation. Same with the buildings, repair and maintenance. Added the 4% to that. Small tools added 4% to, and safety expenses, I added that.
Can I just go back real quick? So if these were coded wrong for the parts equipment, you have $12,361, right? That would
Yeah.
need to go into the repair equipment budget, right?
Yeah,
But even then, that would put you at like 20,000 and some change, and
Yeah.
you currently only have budgeted 15.
yeah.
So is that accurate, or does that need to be bumped up?
I mean, I try and shoot for averages just because, you know, this is its own fund, and when there's reserves there, if it fluctuates a couple $1,000s here or there, it kind of picks itself up at the end of the year. You know, yes, if I look at that, it probably could be bumped up to 20. But it was also 4,021, so I kind of try and pick the middle ground too. So that's why I picked the 15,600. That building repair and maintenance was high in 22, but is kind of back down to its normal $5,000. So that's where I left it. Communications, we lowered. It looks like I shot kind of high last year, and it's gonna come in to that, you know, $4,000 to $3,000 range. So I have that at $4,000. Liability left alone, and workers' compensation. The power pumping. That's all the electricity for the wells and whatnot out there, and I estimate that we're gonna land at that 39,000-ish this year, or 38, so I have it at 39. Other improvements, that 18,000 is for new meters at the old well site to replace the meters that meter the water that comes to town.
And can I ask, the current budget was 53, so what was that accounting for?
I would have to look at all my last year notes are gone, but I believe part of that was new drives at the new well site. If I looked back at, well, I could pull up my 22 CIP. But those are, you know, if I know we need new drives for the pumps, those will fluctuate off the CIP. You know, your other improvements is, at least for me, 99% of the time, it's gonna be a CIP item, so it's not gonna go year to year. I know we budgeted new drives last year. I don't know what the rest of that is. I know it wasn't 53,000 for the drives, but we had monitoring devices on the wells that the DNR required. That was part of that.
Okay.
But that is all I have for the well site. Skip page, well, you can look at page 6 if you want. That's all my notes for the previous page. On to page 7 for the water plant expenses. This is all the labor for working at the water plant and treating the water, and chemicals for treating the water, and lab fees for testing the water. Like I said, the labor's lines seem decent, so I left them where they were, 43,603,7,243. The temporary is 2,521 in this fund. The FICA is at 3,237. Medicare at 898. Para at 3,916. Health insurance, raised that 10% to that 8,640. Life insurance stayed at 65. The laundry is at 226. And that's just for, the guys get really muddy, so we have a washing machine at the water plant, so that's usually just like laundry detergent for cleaning the clothes. Janitor supplies is for mop heads and whatnot for Gabe to clean at the plant. Lab fees is for all our state required, sampling, and, that's $5,647. Repairs equipment for any repairs that are needed for new valves or whatever, new chemical pump. Some of that equipment's really expensive, it fluctuates, so I tried to kinda grab in the middle at that 11,000. Building repair and maintenance, garage doors, walk-in doors, painting, whatever needs to keep the buildings up, we're kind of balanced between, that 13,000 was low the one year, but, and haven't spent a lot of that this year, but I know we need a couple walk-in doors, on the building and whatnot, so it's gonna keep that there. Postage expenses, small stamp stuff, small tools. I raised that 4%. Safety expenses. I left that
So
one alone.
I have a question,
Yeah.
In a matter of saving time, can we just look at a page and maybe if somebody spots an outlier that they have a question on, is that,
I guess the salaries and Medicare and all that's just kinda, it's
Yeah.
there with, negotiations with the
Go
union.
through what you've raised and.
I mean, if we all see outliers on a particular page, like if it's like budgeted for,
Okay.
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, really the only large item in this water plant, budget is the other improvements of 110,000. When we moved the wastewater department over to the water department to combine the utilities departments, we don't have enough storage for the equipment at the water plant, so that's for a storage building for the jet router and the vac and some of the wastewater equipment that has to be relocated to the water plant, so that's the big change in the water plant expenses.
Is that the facility on Fairfax?
Yep, the concrete building there, right next to the street shop there.
So so why does that fluctuate from year to year so much, like 178 in 21 and then a 428?
So that 178 and the 428 was that filter rehab project at the water plant where we repainted and replaced all the filter media, so it kinda got pulled into 2 years.
Okay.
And those are big, the other improvements is out where I'm gonna stick most of my CIP items.
All right.
So it was, I don't remember, 600,000.
Then last year, we didn't budget for nothing then because there's no,
Cause we didn't do any large improvements
Okay.
like that.
got it?
Any questions on that one?
Nope.
Distribution repairs, I raised the health insurance 10%. I'll just look at my notes and ramble off what I have in here that's
Yeah,
notable.
I think that's a good suggestion. If any of you have any particular questions, ask them, of course, but most of these numbers do speak for themselves. If you counter the 10% increase on health insurance, 4% overall on various purchased items.
The 231 fund is a fairly substantial fund, but any distribution repairs, if we have, leaks or, the street repairs that have to be done, that's, the average is 80,000. The 530 fund, we have a lot of paper maps that need to be digitized, to kind of move us forward, and that's the software that we need to digitize those those paper maps that we have curled up in the engineer's room.
Brandon, on the 312 professional fees, it's 62,000. Is that for the mapping of the system? The
Yeah.
Request for
Yeah, so-
proposals?
That's the water share of the, RFP that we're putting out.
Sure.
For my estimate on what that's gonna cost. Underneath the equipment line, 540, we need a boss plow for the pickup for cleaning out the well site in the winter time, and our lawnmower needs to be replaced. And, motor vehicles, 550, we have a pickup that's on its 10-year cycle to be replaced. Any questions on that one?
Tell me more about the other improvements, the map thing.
So the map, so what we need is there's scanning software, and Chad is the one that I kind of went to for guidance on that, but it scans, it digitizes, and a lot of it'll pick out the label on the map, and it'll automatically name it. If Widseth, let's just say, drew us an improvement map for Eichhoff Boulevard, it'll say Eichhoff Boulevard. It'll title the scanned document as Eichhoff Boulevard Water Main Improvement 1981, so that when we need to go, if we need to reference the map, we can type in keywords of Eichhoff Boulevard Water Main, and then it'll shoot us, we'll just say 10 possible maps that we can reference, rather than going to engineers' map pull-out drawers that have been scattered and we just can't really find anything right now. So it's more just digitizing our current paper maps and getting them on a digital platform, basically.
Okay, and so the total for this is 60,000?
Yes, and
So
I
is this
took
a 2-year cost? Or
I
what?
took 30 out of the water and 30 out of the wastewater, so I should change that note to 30 in the notes instead of 60.
30 out of water, 30 out of waste?
Yes.
And then, is that just like a one-time fee then?
Yes, that's the one-time fee. There's, like with any software, there'll be annual fees to it
But that's included for
for this year anyways, yeah.
okay. Do we know what it is, like the annual cost?
Chad, did you get a quote on that?
Yeah, I do have a quote for that. I'll try and pull that up here for the discussion. It's a product from Toshiba called DocuWare. It's a document imaging library system.
Well, that would be under the IT budget then, or yours, the annual fee?
I mean, most of the annual fees that are just water-based come out of the water and wastewater fee typically, but I'll steal from Chad.
I overthought that, sorry.
I'll steal from Chad if you want me to. can see that the revenues, projected revenues you can see what revenues have been in previous years and see where you're landing. And, the projected, revenues versus expenses were 169,674 short. So that 200,000 sent to other improvement funds would balance us out.
Right, so.
But if we truly look, I mean, even at that, when we get our auditor's report this year, I should look back at last year and see what was depreciated out of the out of the water fund, but I'm guessing we're gonna depreciate a couple 100,000 in towers and water main and
Sure.
equipment too, so,
I feel like I'm having a hard time with like a real justification in moving that $200,000 over to the improvement fund, which would then balance this out if we kept it in here.
yeah, but it's also been a really difficult conversation with assessing properties too for improvements, so, if you pull this 200,000, it has been spent on road improvements in the last 15 years, so your street improvements are already not funding themselves, and if you I guess the way that you can justify it in my mind, it does make sense because 90% of the time when the roads are redone, we try and schedule them once the road has hit the end of life, but it doesn't always end up that way. And you might dig up a street that had 5 years left in its life, but you dig half of it out for a water main replacement. So, then that 200,000 was sent to that improvement fund that's gonna pay to repair that road. So,
And that
Then
is
we're
a
gonna
conversation we're gonna have before we set our budget about assessing for street and or water. Because there are some pretty strict requirements for that. And if we have the fund in the improvement fund, that can lessen the burden of an assessment. But that's a conversation we'll have to have and you all have to have when we get to the final budget number.
Yeah, I guess I'm just having a hard time, and I understand that we need the money, but then don't we also need the money here? Otherwise, we're in the hole. I'm just trying to understand, like, is it better to take it out of this budget or is it better to assess? I mean, I guess we have to get the money somehow, right?
yeah.
Right, but the requirements for assessment, we'll talk about again, but they're much more stringent, much more difficult. If you recall, when we had that first assessment meeting, there has to be an increase in the value of a person's property to justify the assessment. So that becomes somewhat problematic. But again, that's a
Yeah.
conversation we're gonna have to have as a council. You'll have to have that.
Well, I think it's
conversation.
also problematic that we're 169,000 budgeted in the hole. So,
And I wasn't, the way that I was explained, or the way that I was presented, I had been told since I had been in this position for a long time that there was a multi-million-dollar reserve in the water fund. And when I've really dug into the financial reports, it looks, when you look at the unrestricted reserve fund line, when you run the report, it says there's an unrestricted reserve of 9-point-some million dollars in the water fund. But when you actually start looking at it, 95% of that is actual asset value that is in place that they haven't depreciated yet. So we don't have, we have 900-ish thousand in cash and investments right now, but in 27, we're gonna have to spend all that for a tower rehab. So that's why it would be nice to have a target right now that you guys wanted half a year's reserve, and we could set a budget that we knew we were gonna spend about $1 million, so I can't,
Because
that,
every year that I've been here and we've gone through this, you know, some people say we have too much reserves, you know, I'm not one of those people. Like if it's in your savings, you wanna try to keep it there for something catastrophic happening.
yeah,
So that's why, you know, eventually when we get the numbers, I wanna have a conversation with everybody about, this is our number for each unrestricted reserve that we have. This is the number that we need to try to maintain from year to year. And that way, when we go through our budgets and we see something drastic happen in one of these unrestricted reserve, we can start to, some bells should start to sound and say what the heck happened in that area.
yep,
Well, I also think the bigger part, I think, Brendan, that you've brought to light is the cash versus
Right.
the assets. And that's not showing, and that's not something we're seeing. We're just seeing bottom line numbers and being able to actually see what that means. And then also, and I'm assuming this is part of the issue of the audit, is that things haven't been depreciated like they're supposed to have been. So it would be
Yeah, it's
good to
just
see
that-
and understand all of that as well.
that unrestricted reserve line is so deceiving in
Right.
that report.
Right.
And I think too, some education for me on these reserved funds and, you know, what those because those reserved funds are restricted to spend only on water. If you have a fund that is a reserve fund for water, that can only be tapped for water.
Yep.
Is that correct? So it really, even though it's unrestricted, it's restricted?
I mean, at the end of the day, I think if you guys decide to pull $900,000 out of water and send it to the general fund, you guys can do that. I don't think it's
Yeah, no,
legally.
that's not a good plan. But I mean,
No, I
but if we-
know.
If we grew
Like
our
in theory, I
reserve-
guess you could say
It's
that, but it's
possible.
not recommended
Yeah,
or
Yeah.
if we
suggested.
grew our reserve, my whole thing is if we grow our reserves from, let's just say we have $1 million. And then when, at the time our books clear, our audit is done and we have $1.5 million. Well, in my mind, we over levied
Yep.
our citizens that much, and I think, well, we're going through these budgets, and we told our citizens, well, we have to levy you because of this budget. Well, if we don't do that, then we owe our citizens back that money and that's what I'm saying, to be used that towards the next year's budget, so we can levy them that much less. Because that's the whole point I'm trying to get to.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I'd really like to see an accurate audit.
Yep.
And then I'd also like to see what the suggested reserves are, and like suggest reserves that are usable and not assets and not depreciated, but actual dollars. And I think that we have not gotten a clear understanding of that for quite a while, and it's kind of just been brushed over.
It's been
And so I think
elusive.
we need to have a very, and hopefully, going forward, that is the case. But I think that, you know, Corky, I know you had said that you would make suggestions as to what we could take out of certain budgets, but I think we literally need to have a fuller picture of what is going on.
Yep.
I don't think anybody would argue with that. And as soon as we get the audit, you'll have it. And I hopefully you have a better picture of what is actually available and what is an asset that hasn't been depreciated, or capital assets that are not actual cash.
Yeah. Are we on to page 1?
Page 1 of the 602 sewer wastewater fund. The deeper I get into the wastewater, the more that department needs. I really think that, you know, we're meeting with Ellers on Thursday to try to kind of understand bonding a little bit and see how we can utilize it. I feel like this is the department that needs some sort of bond the most, just because it's the deeper you get into it, the more it needs, and nothing's cheap. The notes on the rate increases I should have deleted from, that was last year's increase from $1.75 to $3.50 in that 7,200 range there. But, I mean, I'll say this for new council, if you look, our revenue in the wastewater was 400,000, and I know I said this last year, but the wastewater department is essentially the same. It has a lot of the same needs as the water department, and the fact that we funded it at 400,000 for many years is the reason that department is in the condition that it is. Instead of pumping the water out of the ground like we do for the potable water, we pump it at the end to the ponds. We have, for every street that has a water main, it has a sewer main. You know, every well is basically a lift station. They're eye for an eye. We've been funding our water department at $1.5 million a year for years, and we've funded our wastewater department into its grave. It is, everything is done. Everything is falling off the wall. Everything needs this. When I hope we get this RFP to go through and they look at all of these items, and it's going to be bad in the wastewater department, because everything hit its end of life 10 years ago.
Is the
And when you
reason,
turn that into numbers, they're big numbers.
so is the reason for that twofold? Is it the reason for that is maybe the department didn't ask for it, what was needed back in the day, and then us as council members said, no, you gotta cut the levy, and then is that where some of our cuts came into play from stuff like that?
I've tried to wrap my head around why we've supported the water department financially and why we didn't the wastewater. I don't know why it ended up where it was or where we're at, but it's, you know, every time we raise rates, whether it's assessments, utilities, you guys get a lot of heat, we department heads get a lot of heat. It's not a easy conversation, and I think it was just avoided over the years.
Well, I mean, on this, I mean, we've taken a huge jump from the previous years, you know, just in this last year. So barring, I mean, are these numbers, I mean, obviously we got a lot of improvements we need to do, but is these numbers that we have, if everything was in decent shape, are these numbers that we're getting, this revenue that we're getting, is that ideal, or is that still too low, or what are your thoughts?
You know, most of everything in the distribution has been depreciated already, so obviously as you get new equipment, the annual depreciation is gonna go up with that on the auditor's report. We increased it to the 1.3 in total revenue, just to try and give you guys something to where I thought that's where we should kind of shoot for right now, where I thought we needed to be. I don't know that that's enough to get it back up, but I think that's what you need to maintain the system once it's in place.
And that's accomplished by doubling the rate?
It's either I didn't put any of that in there.
Oh.
I just threw the number in there. We either have to, you know, the total in this budget. Expenditures is $1,382,000. 300,000 of that is an increase this year I added for main improvements. You know, Houston Avenue needs to be relined before it gets new street over it, and sewers are easier to replace or improve because they have a resin membrane you force down the main. It basically cures a new pipe inside of the main, but it's about the same cost as trench cutting a street. You know, the benefits of lining it is you don't trench, you don't dig 8-10 feet deep, and then your brand new road settles that you put in the next year. So, but, you know, I feel we need to start, we support the water distribution system with $300,000 worth of improvements a year on the mains. We should do the same for the distribution system on the sewer system. So, you know, you don't have to, we have, Tim, we have a projected close to $1 million in revenue from last year's increases. So, like I said, do you, instead of increasing the rates, do you assess that 300,000 in sewer improvements to the street improvements? That's an option, but it's always hard. It's always easier to take $5 a month from the entire community than to take $10,000 once out of somebody's pocket. It's just it's always an easier conversation. So we'll discuss that as we get there further in the process here on what you guys want, and I'll attack from whatever angle you tell me to go from. So attacks my probably.
Well, I
not the
agree,
best
I
word.
agree with you. I agree that we need to support the wastewater like we do the regular water, so we need to figure that out. The other part of the discussion is what do we, once we're able to get those rates to where we think they should be, the next part of the discussion is what do we do about the equipment that's and stuff that's there that we need to fix, right?
Yeah, and that's, you know, part of the 80 or 90,000 that was in my budget this year, for the wastewater, for an analysis of the lift stations, and to try and get a good estimate on what those facilities need will give us a good picture on what we need to bond, but it also gives a lifespan to each new piece of equipment, and it'll help us depreciate everything properly every year, and it'll help us plan our budgets for those necessary, you know, all these professional services are expensive, but it gives us everything we need to succeed for 30 years down the road. So, is there anything on the revenue lines that anybody wants to question? The storm service fee, is that new fee that's a base $3 on every account to help repair storm water infrastructure when needed. So that's that 100,000 is a new revenue from the adjusted rates that we did last year. The 7210. And the wastewater is a much simpler budget. Almost everything other than the service repairs is underneath this one category. So that's the labor for half of my labor and the 2 wastewater operators. The overtime is the on-call on the weekend. So the big increased distribution repairs underneath the 231 going to 490,000. 300,000 of that is the water, the lining that needs to be done ahead of improvements. the 60,000 and the 312 professional fees is the wastewater share of that RFP request.
What's the riprap material?
Riprap, our ponds are lined with rock, to keep the outer levees from eroding, and they need quite a bit of riprap to repair, the riprap on the edges of the levees, cause they've been neglected for a few years. So we had 50,000 in last year's budget that we've been working on this summer of hauling rock in there and repairing, and I was gonna continue that until I felt like we were in a good place to where we only need maybe 10 grand per year to maintain it. But that's basically just the purchase of the rocks and the contractors help to place the rocks.
And the sludge in the H2S reduction program?
Yes. So the sludge, so that is, in wastewater, you're fighting the solids that you're pumping into your ponds all the time, and if you don't introduce bacteria and bugs to consume the solids in the pond, eventually you have to pay a company to come in and dredge them out. So if you pay a dredge to come in, the size of our ponds, it would be a $4 to $6 million project to dredge the ponds out. So this is a bug that eats the solids and reduces the solids, and rather than paying that big ticket item, you throw these bags of bugs in the pond and it keeps your solids down. We had a company come in and radar test our ponds to see how much solids were in them. We're only treating our south pond right now because that was the only one that they were concerned about. That one had 2 feet of sludge in it.
What kind of bugs are these?
It's just a bacteria. So you see the Ridex commercial for flushing it down your septic system. It's just,
So it's a bacteria, it's not a bug.
yes,
Okay.
yep.
What kind of shape are our ponds in out there overall?
The gates to send water to the river don't operate, but we never discharge to the river. The only time that became an issue was during the high water event when all our ponds got full. So that's one of my goals in the next year, is to get a good look at those gates and figure out. I can't get a clear answer. Some of the old operators told me that the MPCA made us cement the pipes shut because our permit doesn't allow discharging. So I just need the time to get down there and really dig into those. Once we get our riprap repaired, they're ponds. They're holding water like they're supposed to. The only thing that, I got the report back from the river bank on the east edge of our east primary is sloughing pretty bad, and it's that area that Crystal has to monitor because their big pile of lime is sitting there, and that area has, the levees for the pond is only about 40 feet away from that slough, so that will probably be in the next 5-year CIP to move that levee to the west, so that if that river bank does fail in the future, it doesn't fail and drain all that wastewater into the river. So, but other than that, our system is Crookston is pretty lucky on both ends of, our water that we take from our well field is gravity fed to town. We don't have to pump it multiple times. Our systems are pretty efficient. Our wastewater ponds, our primaries are up on top on high ground, and then our secondaries that we discharge to are on sand beds. So all the water gets filtered through the ground and we never have to discharge. It just saves us a ton of money on sampling and MPCA permits and whatnot. I mean, they're not in great shape because of the riprap here and there, but we've gotten the really bad areas this year, you know, with some riprap. I would say of the system, our lagoons are probably in the best shape. But that's not saying much. Oh, is there anything else notable in here? What's my other improvement line items? You know, I was taking that kind of phased approach to our air exchange systems. 4 got a new air exchanger, 3's in the process of getting a new air exchanger in 23, and lift station 2 is our next phase of putting an air exchange system, functioning air exchange system back into the lift station. So 70,000 of the 530 is for an air exchanger. 110,000 is the wastewater share of that equipment shed. And then, looks like I'm off 5,000, or maybe it was 65,000. I took 35,000 out of the wastewater for that map scanning software. And then on the equipment line, the 55,000, that is to replace the lift station 3 bypass. That is on the edge of failing. Those are all the notable large items I see in here. And then page 6 is the sewer line service repair. This is similar to every bill has 50 cents a month on it for sewer service repairs. That covers from 10 feet outside the house's foundation or deck, whichever is further to the main. And really the only item in here that's substantial is the contracted services, and that's the whoever we end up paying to repair the services when they are found to be a insurance claim.
Did we just like, why was the budgets for 21 and 22 so low? Comparatively till this year in the proposed budget?
I think the was a sewer service insurance adopted in like, it's not that old.
No, it's not.
It might have been in 21.
20 or 21, I think.
Yeah.
Basically, it's a fee on the water bill, and it explain how that works. It's
10 feet from the front of the house or the house, whichever direction the sewer goes. So 10 feet off the foundation of the house towards the main.
Right.
Once you hit that point, if the damage, so it has to be offset or collapsed pipe. It can't be like roots in the pipe or general maintenance. But if the pipe is found to be collapsed or offset and it's 10 feet or more off the foundation, then the insurance policy that the city has covers the repair or replacement of that sewer line.
So I'm just asking like why it was so low in 21 and 22 and then so much higher.
We've just had more repairs this year than we've had 4, I think, repairs this year.
Okay.
And I guess, you know, the seventh page on here isn't as, you know, without, I mean, we kind of made up that $1.3 million, revenue, base. So I don't have a good model for how we're gonna get there, so if you take out that increase of, what's that?
It's like 250,000.
350,000, then this fund is short about 350,000, basically.
Well, and it looks like for 21 and 22, we've been way over or in the hole.
Yep. And we're almost breaking even now
Right.
with the changes we made, but
I'm just wondering about other councils, like what, when they saw, like, why are we addressing this now? This seems like it should have been addressed like way before now, but I guess that's.
Well, and that may be actually true, but unfortunately, we're the ones who have to address it.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm just saying, like, just looking at the last couple budgets, it's a pretty glaring hole. So,
We did attempt to address it somewhat in the budget that we set for 23.
yeah.
With the rate increases, but that was a more measured approach, I believe, you know, trying to not do it all at once and increase our revenue some and take additional steps this year for 24.
so the revenue in the 701 fund, this is basically the savings account for the 701 fund that was pulled out of all those general fund accounts. And you'll see when we get to the last page why I think it needs to be increased, but, the 8,400 equipment rental, that increase is that 25% across those funds to bring it up to that 457,000. Salvage is extremely erratic depending on, that is the old equipment that we auction off. If we have, last year or this year is high with that 33,000 because we had a lot of junk sitting around that we sold. But I don't know of anything large that's gonna bring in large revenue this year for that, so I kinda left it at 0, but. So the total revenue is at 457,000, the proposed budget.
And can I just ask the 24,000 that's currently year to date, is that just because things haven't been input or if we haven't?
Yes, cause I haven't gotten that to auger yet. So the salary line, most of that is our mechanic that works on a lot of the equipment. And all of the associated health insurance and whatnot for him. The gas is every piece of pretty much all the fuels for the snow removal, the street or the street repairs, everything comes out of this 701 fund, and it looks like we're gonna land in that 85,000 this year. So that's where I put us. Miscellaneous supplies, I added that 4%.
Do we buy gas in bulk? Or
We do
fuel
not,
in
we
bulk?
purchase it from local gas stations. I think I know they removed tanks from the street department and a couple of the departments. I think the maintenance on our individual tanks was just greater than just purchasing it from local stations.
Well, and then the mitigation of all the pollutants too.
Yeah. Really the only large, proposed budget item that's different than normal in here is that, well, it's not really different, but the 203,000 is for a front end loader and a patch wagon, which brings the total proposed expenditures to $479.
So, you're looking at lease options on that?
I looked at lease options on that broom, and it added about, I don't remember exactly, I'll have to look, but it's 40 to 60,000 to the purchase
Could you
price.
bring like some numbers to the table next time around?
Yeah.
On that, just so we can show lease to return, lease to own and purchase, so we can.
Yeah, I mean, when I looked at the motor grader lease to own, or just a straight lease, and the broom, I mean, you don't, unless you purchase the extended warranty like you can purchase on a grader that you purchase, you still only have the same 2 years of warranty. And
Can't you return it?
you could return it every
Before
2
the-
years.
Before the 2 years is up.
Well,
That's-
you could, but you could also buy a vehicle and roll it every 2 years too. I mean, it's just from what I see in the lease agreements, when I talk to Ziegler Cat, he has leased one motor grader to a municipality in the state of Minnesota.
So why does the state have so much leased equipment and the municipalities don't? I mean, I don't know what the difference.
Is
That's
it
what
the
I talk-
amount that they do?
What?
I'm assuming there's a savings with how many you're getting. That might be
Well,
more
but I mean,
beneficial.
we're all part of the state, so can't we jump onto the state lease deal and get on the same thing from the,
Or is it that their budget is $20
Significantly more.
million and throwing an extra $20,000 at a piece of equipment, they can afford it? I don't know.
yeah.
In the two.
Because the benefits of leasing is you don't have the expense of repairs. If you have, you can return it at any time. Like when you lease a vehicle, you rent it, you lease it through, most people lease it through the end of the warranty. And then when the warranty is done, then you either buy it out or return it and get another one.
Oh, trust me, Delaney, if we can get on a lease agreement and we can get a new motor grader every 2 years and we can afford to do it, you are not gonna hear any
So
arguments out
you're
of
saying they don't offer it? Nobody offers them types of things?
They offer it, it is extremely expensive.
The state might get a fleet rate, meaning like to the point of like a discount, so they can get it at a fleet rate, where we wouldn't be able to get it at a fleet rate.
Right, but since we're part of the state of Minnesota, can municipalities jump on to those state rates like the state gets? I mean,
I guess it'd be what the contracts the state has negotiated.
I can check into it.
Yeah.
I would think if it was available to municipalities, somebody else would be doing it, but I could be wrong, so. I will dig into that on that payloader if we end up buying one before we buy one.
I'll talk to a couple of my sources from the state and find out, because I wanna know why they lease a lot of their equipment.
Yeah,
And like you said, it could be because the state leases 100, 200, or 500 graders a year, so they get a better I don't know.
well, and when I,
get some information from them and find out what their lease rate is.
Yeah.
Why is it?
and it
What's the-
sounded like the guy that was leasing to, state entities, he said typically they own 8 of them. And they lease one, because the one that they can get a fairly cheap lease rate because it's their backup and they're not putting a ton of hours on it. And in that situation, he said it might make sense to lease it, but when he's telling you that it doesn't pay to lease, and he's the guy that's cashing in on the leases, it must be pretty the grader was about $80,000 to that they tacked on to the purchase price to lease. So that grader
So,
was
so that
300,000.
is like on your graders in the past, it'd be nice to know then, you bought it for $80,000, and what was your total maintenance bill on it the whole time that you owned it? So then that's something that's comparable in the discussion that we're having. I mean, if we're buying it for 80,000 and then over 10 years, we've stuck another 80,000 into it, and then that's all part of the equation.
Yep.
Well, see what you can find.
Yep.
So the last page here, even with the proposed budget, it looks like we're in the whole 21,000.
Yep.
Am I understanding that correctly?
Yep.
Okay.
So I'd have to go up probably 25% to get it to break even.
Okay.
And with, with the street sweeper that we purchased in the 701, there is like $20,000 left in the 701 fund. 21,000 left. There is basically no reserve left in the central garage. So we need to get it, we purchased the grader that we needed to, and what else was in that 600?
So as we went through your budget here, I'm not seeing a lot of wish list stuff in your,
I do not cushion my budgets.
I mean,
this is,
like the first round, typically there's a lot of wish list stuff in there, but like in yours, I'm not seeing any.
it's bad. These funds aren't supporting themselves already. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you guys I want a new I don't know, a new pony, whatever, when these departments
Are dire.
just need the
Yeah.
bare basics right now.
Yeah.
There's no glitz in these budgets.
I'm looking forward to the Ayler's presentation on Thursday.
Yeah. Yeah. Was it 5 o'clock?
5:30.
5:30.
What was it, 5:30?
It's 5 something,
We have
I
an
don't
EDA
remember.
meeting.
I think
We have an EDA meeting.
Oh, then that's why, okay.
Yeah.
No, that's tomorrow, or that's Thursday,
yeah, it's Thursday. Everything's Thursday.
and then the Ellers
It's
is
Thursday.
Ellers, yeah, we meet prior to the Ellers meeting. Yeah, there's been some confusion in the email.
Yeah.
But take a look at your last invitation.
Yeah, take a look at the last one. Unless I'm mistaken, was that canceled?
The
Yeah.
one for tomorrow morning was canceled.
because we had it last week.
You're right, it starts at 5,
It's 5, but which day, Thursday or Friday?
Thursday.
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 Okay, that makes, okay.
Thursday,
Yeah, I think-
5 to 7.
They put it on our calendars, or invited us. I think we're done with this, right? I'd like to propose that we revisit the Park and Rec budget. I think what we did here tonight was really beneficial, and I think really digging in instead of jumping around, I think is crucial. I didn't feel very comfortable having a good understanding of what the Park and Rec budget actually entailed in our last conversation, and I'm wondering if this can get back on the schedule for Ways and Means.
I got no,
Anybody
Well,
else?
or, because we're all gonna have a second round, right, or more?
Yes, yes.
So I mean, we could hit them harder.
I think because of the conversations that have been had outside of here as far as constituents coming and sharing concerns, that allowing some of those individuals whose personal budgets might be affected by how this works, giving them that opportunity to be here while we're having those conversations wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. Just my thoughts. I don't know if anybody else is interested in revisiting this budget.
Well, they wouldn't have that opportunity in
Yep.
a next round.
Yeah, I don't feel like I have a good handle on this budget. I don't know how everybody else feels, but I think there's a lot of questions still to be had on these, and just even some of the comments on what some of those budgets meant, I don't think were incredibly accurate.
what's scheduled for Monday?
Yeah.
So there's a combination, I believe it's building inspections, myself, and airport.
Do we have a schedule yet for the meetings, like which budgets?
That's not a Chad
No,
question.
that hasn't been shared with us. We just find out when it happens.
We can do, I think what we can do is hopefully will be back on Wednesday. We can delineate which ones are set for the various Ways and Means committees and get them to you.
That would be great.
That'd be great.
Are all these budgets already gone through?
No.
What do you mean, all these,
Well,
each department?
when you're giving them to us, like, does everybody have already turned these into you where we could just have them now and not wait the Friday before a meeting? To have more than 2 days to look through these?
Well, at this point, the IT budget has gone through, the airport budget has gone through. And what was the third one for Monday?
I guess, yeah.
Building
official.
inspections.
Yes, we've gone through that. We can compile them and get them to you. The problem up to this point has been timing, but the ones that are coming up for Monday have been gone through.
That'd be great.
So consensus with council on going through park and rec budget again, or?
I think a suggestion only, when we come back to you the second time, we would bring the park and rec director with us prior to that second go-through.
I guess I don't understand. He was already here.
But you said you wanted to go through it again with
Yeah.
him?
Yeah. So
That's
would
what
the
I'm
second time
suggesting.
around not have the directors? Is that what you're saying?
Typically, it does not, but we can have them come.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, fair
Yeah.
enough. Yeah, typically, or at least last year, when we came the second time, it was council, the finance director, and myself laying out where we had made reductions to see where we get and find out where you think we ought to be in terms of the levy percentage.
Okay. The other thing that I know we've seen in the past with these budgets is also like the capital improvement plan, the 5-year plan, and what the expectation is for what they want for each of the next 5 years. And I haven't seen anything like that yet. Are we gonna get something like that?
Absolutely. Those haven't necessarily been completed. And it's not an excuse, but it's a rationale. Consistent with what Delane had been talking about, we'd hope to get some numbers from the audit. So we could plug those numbers in perhaps in a capital improvement plan. We haven't gotten that audit yet.
Okay.
And also just, I will be contacting each of you to speak with you individually about some matters. I just want you to be aware of that. And I will be calling you individually on Wednesday when I get back.
Okay.
Okay. Brandon, thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Sorry it took so long.
No, honestly, Brandon,
No.
this was amazing, and I think that, I hope the rest of these budgets go like this, where we can get a really clear understanding about what is under everything. Because I don't necessarily feel that that was the case, obviously, last week, specifically with Park and Rec, so thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.